I was digging through the archives in one of the many hard drives stored on my computer desk, looking through old footage, and I found this episode from back when I first started YouTube. Even before my YouTube channel now, there was another YouTube channel that got taken down because of my right-wing views. But I had made this video and I never uploaded it. And this goes back to sometime in the early 2000s, right around the time I started hunting beast outdoors. And this particular footage, I believe, got trash canned, never used. And I found it particularly interesting looking back at time, because keep in mind that this is a time frame when everybody was saying stay out of bedding. Everybody was saying don't be mobile. Everybody kind of hunted food source and rut sign and stuff, and they said stay out of the woods in early season and all that kinds of crap. And it's kind of cool to look back at that time and see how closely my values then match them now. I'm sure there's some subtle differences. I'm sure some of you will pick up on it. But really, the biggest difference between then and now is a little less wrinkles and a lot more hair.
I think most hunters hunt bucks by waiting for the buck to make a mistake. They set up over food sources, scrapes, rubs, funnels, etc. and wait for the bucks to come to them. The trouble with that logic is deer are nocturnal. Deer moving around in daylight is like humans moving around at night. The older a buck gets, the more this is true. My style of hunting doesn't really revolve around a buck making a mistake. I hunt them where they spend the majority of their daylight hours, their bedroom, or adjacent to their bedroom. I don't believe any buck is truly nocturnal. They move a little bit in daylight. They just don't move far from their bedding areas. They might get up an hour before dark, but they might only move 100 yards. Around a buck's bedding area is what I call a safe zone. This can be an area anywhere from 75 to a couple hundred yards radius of the bed. Within this area, the buck feels safe. He rarely ever smells humans there, and he feels like he knows what's going on in that area while he's bedded. He feels that he's safe to move in that area during daylight. At the edge of the safe zone is what I consider his staging area. That's where I like to set up, is right where he stages on the edge of that safe zone. And a safe zone or a staging area is where he's going to hold up until it gets dark or the edge of darkness before he moves on further. They don't necessarily stop there, but they'll hesitate, go slow up until that point. And then often you see them speed up at dark and go through there. That's where you want to pick them off. That's something they do from their bedding area just about every day. But they don't wander out to rub lines every day or scrape lines or trail crossings or food sources. If they did, hunting them would be easy. I scout the beds in the spring or the winter. When I find a bed that I want to hunt, I try to, number one, figure out why he beds there. Is it because of the wind direction? Is it because he can hear you coming? Is it because he can see you coming? Generally, it's a combination of a couple of those. Number two, when does he bed there? Is he bedding there because of a particular food source? Like, is there an oak ridge right over there that he's feeding on, and he's only bedding in that bed when the oaks are dropping? Is there some corn around, and he's only bedding there when the cornfields are in, or the beans haven't been picked yet. Those are some things to take into account so that you know when you should be hunting there. So you got to do a little detective work at these beds. After making those determinations, I look from the bed and see what the buck can see. What can he see from his bed? How far can he see? I think about not only what he can see, but what can he smell and what can he hear from that position. I then pick out trees based on being just out of sight of the bed, just out of hearing of the bed, and where he ain't going to smell me. This should all be done right when you find this bed when you're scouting. Mark it in a notebook, mark it on a map, keep track of it. This should all be done right when you're scouting. You'll probably need to take notes. Mark it in a map, what your access route is, what tree you're going to hunt in, and really keep track of that stuff, because the next fall when you go hunting, it's easy to forget some of that stuff. It's easy to forget a backup tree or an access route or that kind of thing. You don't want to go into these bedding areas in the fall and scout unless you don't have any intentions on hunting there that fall. Do your scouting in the spring, because those deer don't tolerate human intrusion very often. So it takes them a while to settle down from when you've been there. In some terrains and with some beds, you can get closer than others. Sometimes you can't be within that staging area. You got to be just outside of it. And then you got to wait for the right weather conditions or the right moon phase or something to get that buck to go a little bit further than that staging area in daylight.
I hope you enjoyed that old clip as much as I did. Just wanted to give you an update on what's going on. 1 week, exactly 7 days from today, I'll be on the road to Nebraska. We're doing a Battle of the Bows out there. It's going to be a little different than in the past. We're doing a return trip. We're going to be going up against Shane Simpson, who's hunted there for years. We went there last year for the first time. And should be an interesting hunt. But 7 days from now, heading there. Their opener is September 1st. Should be a fun time. I got my shooting a lot better this year. My good friend Steve Pagel, who's a master with bows. He owned Forge bows before he retired. But I told him about my problems with being able to see the target and the pin at the same time, and he put a little lens in a peep for me, and he had to use pretty much the strongest lens they had. And now without glasses I can see really well through that peep. I've tested in low light, high light, all different scenarios, and I'm shooting really well with it. Real happy. The new bow is shooting great. I was having a little bit of issues with tail flight, and the bow was well tuned, but I was having a little bit of issues with tail flight, and we were kind of playing with it, and we found that I was at the high end of my spine on the arrows. So we added some weight to the front of the arrows, and now they're flying much better. So using these G5 strikers on the Mark 244 arrows, which are G5 as well, was just a little bit too stiff. So adding a little weight in here gave me some flex. But all I had was the 100 grain broadheads, and I got a case of them. And I didn't know how fast I could get 125s because they don't have them in the stores around here. So I got them directly from G5. I don't know how fast I'm going to get them. But I weighted the inserts on these instead of the broadheads on a dozen of my arrows, and then I marked the arrows on fletching so I'd know which ones are which. And when I get the 125 broadheads, I'll use those on the other arrows. But I'm actually shooting pretty good. Pretty good.